Hello everyone, I'm Lane Nordland, and this week we are attending the 158th Annual Convention of the American Sheep Industry Association. So thanks for joining the Western Ag Network here on the road. And today finds us at the Fort Worth stockyards. And not only were cattle running through the pens here historically over the years, but sheep were also a main staple. And while we're here in Fort Worth, attendees at the convention are learning about all the opportunities that are in store for the future of the U.S. sheep industry. Today we're joined by the president of the association, Susan Shultz, from the great state of Ohio, or OHIO, as I learned in my FFA days by the FFA state officers from the state of Ohio. But Susan, the last 2 years you've served as the president, and you'll have two more as immediate past president on the board. But what has this experience been like, being able to meet with producers from all over the nation with all different types of operations and backgrounds? What has that experience been like?
Lane, you said it. The diversity in the sheep business is, I mean, it's undescribable. And we had 6 o'clock this morning, we had breakfast with the state presidents, and just to hear their stories of the different ideas that they're using to expand membership in their states, their different issues. You know, we're just not a cookie cutter industry at all. And I think that is probably what I've enjoyed the most.
And also during your tenure as well, the world has gone through some major events, and the lamb and wool markets have gone along with those as well. What do you feel going into the future? What are some of those opportunities that lamb and wool producers have just because of the foundation that ASI has created for them through the good times and the bad?
Well put. Number one, we are a presence in Washington, D.C., and that is because for the past how many years, we go every single spring and meet with our representatives and our senators and talk about the issues that face our producers. And of course, this is the year for the Farm Bill. So 2023, everybody in agriculture is going to keep our fingers crossed that we can get a bipartisan Farm Bill that will support agriculture as it has in the past, and we can get that across the finish line. The second thing that I really feel very optimistic about is that there's opportunities, whether it's niche marketing, whether it's what we call the non-traditional trade. With this solar array kick, I'm telling you, we talked last night, they were talking in one just section of the United States, they're talking about 8 million sheep that will be needed to do grazing in the solar arrays, but we have to be on top of the game. We have to make sure those solar arrays are designed with water and proper fencing so that sheep can be used. As you know, sheep are the animal they've decided. Cattle won't work, goats won't work, but sheep will work. And that would, you know, so they don't have to use mechanical cutting. Yep. So I think the opportunity for grazing is phenomenal. The lamb market took a dive, and there's no doubt it was very difficult for many of our families. It'll come back. People love lamb. They love lamb, and so it'll come back. I'm an optimist.
What advice do you have to young producers out there, whether they're first generation coming into agriculture looking at raising sheep, or maybe they're going out on their own or coming back to the farm or ranch? What are some tips that you have for them about being engaged? Maybe not stepping up into leadership yet, because we see that all the time when a young person goes to the local wool growers meeting, they get put into leadership right away. Sometimes they just need that opportunity to get exposed to it and learn and participate in some of those educational opportunities. What's the advice you have for them?
Absolutely. Get involved at your state level first, and then if you can put your money together, come to convention. I mean, it's just the perfect place to network. And for people who are brand new in the organization, the first thing I would do is buy the Sheepman's Production Handbook. It is this wonderful handbook that I think we're in the 8th edition now, and I call it the Bible of the sheep industry. And it will teach them, if they're willing to learn, all the ins and outs about health, about management, about genetics, the whole ball game. We have lots of new people. If you go around convention, you see these little pink ribbons. Those are all first-time attendees, and we're just thrilled.
And there is a lot of people at convention this year.
It's wonderful.
It was so great walking into that welcome reception last night to a jam-packed ballroom. How does that make you feel as we have the convention down here in Fort Worth, and just as you said, you're optimistic about the future. How does it make you feel as you wrap up your year of service?
I was thrilled to walk in last night and see all those people. And you know, it's been tough. We had a virtual convention. It worked, but it's not fun. And then we were in California, and it was a little expensive for some of our producers to get from the East Coast to the West Coast. We get it. And Fort Worth, I mean, people are here and they're having a good time. And I don't know if you've walked around the hallways, but there's been lots of hugs. Lots of people saying, I haven't seen you for 3 years. And so there's just tremendous optimism. I really thought with the land prices, you know, taking a dive, that people would be a lot more negative, but you don't feel it.
Yep.
I think people were, that's the good thing about the sheep people. Well, maybe agriculture in general. We are so resilient, whether it's climate, whether it's prices, you know, we just pick ourselves up and we keep going. And I think that is proven here.
Well, Susan, thank you for joining us, and thank you for your years of service on the board and also serving as president of the American Sheep Industry Association. Your service is so much appreciated, so thank you for joining us here today. And
you're welcome.
And enjoy the rest of convention.
I sure will. You too.
Again, Susan Shultz, president of the American Sheep Industry Association. We'll have more from here in Fort Worth coming up. Returning back here from Fort Worth, Texas at the American Sheep Industry Association annual convention, there's producers from across the nation gathered here, and also other industry stakeholder groups that support the sheep industry as well. So we're joined today by Chelsea Good with the Livestock Marketing Association. And Chelsea, how are things as we gather here in Fort Worth, Texas from an LMA perspective here in 2023?
We're off to a great year in 2023, and you're really excited to be here with kind of our sheep industry partners. You know, the livestock auctions across the United States sell lots of cattle, but we sell lots of sheep and goats as well. So it's a good chance to be here and visit with our partners in the sheep industry.
Now, one of the key issues that many of our audience members are interested in is just this week that animal disease traceability proposed rule came out, and it can be alarming when USDA hands out a rule. But what really are the changes to this proposed rule, and what does it do to strengthen disease traceability in the countryside? And obviously this is in particular to cattle and bison, but what is the proposed rule? What does it look like?
So the proposal is really focused on not changing what cattle have to be officially identified. Since 2013, there's been a requirement to officially identify certain classes of cattle. What the rule would change is what counts as official identification. Right now, you see a lot of those metal bright tags being utilized. The rule would actually propose transitioning away from those and only utilizing tags that are both electronic and visually readable. So either a dangle tag or even a button tag that has the official USDA seal and a number on it, but that can be read electronically as well. Those animals that would be covered by the rule, same as today, are your sexually intact beef cattle that are 18 months of age and older that are moving across state lines, or dairy cattle of any age that are moving across state lines.
And again, only about 11% of cattle in the U.S. or bison qualify for that. So 89% of the overall cattle herd does not even need to worry about these rules impacting their operations.
That's the numbers that USDA shared, is, you know, that the class of animals, those sexually intact adult beef cattle moving across state lines and dairy cattle moving across state lines is a minority of our herd.
And how important is it, the role that livestock markets play in that disease traceability conversation and process of when something, you know, we don't ever want a disease situation to happen, but they do play an important role in that transaction and transaction process right now?
Well, markets are absolutely essential. You know, we've got some producers that have kind of production scale where they're able to you know, work and tag animals themselves. But you've got a lot of producers, especially in certain parts of the country, that they bring those livestock to an auction untagged, and they kind of rely on the livestock auction to do that tagging. And then also we've got veterinarians at all of our auctions that are writing the health certificates and kind of keeping that movement documentation. I've had some really good conversations with folks at USDA in terms of, when they're doing a disease trace or even a test trace, they have much better results if that animal went through an auction in terms of being able to get some data about where that animal was coming from and where did it go, and the markets play a big role there. It is a lot of work, but that's kind of part of our role in the system.
Again, Chelsea Good with the Livestock Marketing Association is with us. And Chelsea, one of those priorities for LMA right now is we're seeing a lot of meat processing facilities pop up in the countryside, and there's some barriers for market owners to own one of those facilities. Am I correct in that?
You are
review?
correct. A lot of people don't realize this, but there's actually a pretty dated requirement. The Packers and Stockyards Act dates back to 1921, a very different style of doing business in those terminal stockyards. And so at that point in time, there was a prohibition put in place that said that a market agency selling on commission or a livestock auction can't own or operate a meat packing facility. Well, that doesn't totally match with where we're at in our industry today, where we've got a lot of excitement about some of these more local or regional plants. We're wanting to expand our capacity and also expand competition. For our market, an additional person on those seats competing with the other packer buyers is a good thing. And so we're trying to make an adjustment to allow a livestock auction owner to own or invest in a meat processing facility. We also want to kind of keep it at scale. We're focused on those small and regional, and so there would be a threshold. This wouldn't allow the very largest of the packers to suddenly start to get in the marketing business. Rather, it would be focused more on that small and mid-sized processing facilities.
And finally, there's a lot of regional events going on right now, competition-wise, for that World Livestock Auctioneer Championship. What's the annual meeting going to be looking like? It's in Florida this year?
It is, yeah. We're really excited. We just had our last qualifying event for the World Livestock Auctioneer Championship. It's actually the most competitors we've ever had in an event. It was in Missouri in January, and it was awesome day. So we've got our 31 contestants together. They'll be together in June for the World Livestock Auctioneer Championship, and that's going to be hosted in Arcadia, Florida this year. So.
Well, it's exciting, and I always enjoy tuning into that and watching just that process go out, because there's just so many great auctioneers that participate in that program. And for more on everything that Chelsea and I just talked about, and to learn more about their annual meeting, make sure and visit LMA online. Again, Chelsea Good with the Livestock Marketing Association. As we continue our conversations from the American Sheep Industry Association's annual convention in Fort Worth, Texas, we were just discussing animal disease traceability, focused on that cattle end of things from the Livestock Marketing Association's perspective. And we're going to focus more on disease traceability within the sheep industry in our conversation today with Dr. Cindy Wolf, DVM, the winner of the Peter Orwick Camp Tender Award this year, along with our good friend, Dr. Jim Logan of Wyoming, a fellow veterinarian. How are things? You're a producer, you're a retired educator from the University of Minnesota. How are things here this week?
Well, we've had a great meeting, tremendous amount of information exchange. The only thing we haven't been able to do yet is fix the lamb prices.
That's one thing we've talked at length about here this week. But as I mentioned, you taught in the College of Veterinary Medicine for 34 years at the University of Minnesota. What was that like, being a producer, but also helping that next generation of the valuable tool that all of us need, veterinarians in the countryside? What was that experience like?
I had a wonderful time teaching. The administration let me do most of my teaching out on farms, giving the students a real experience. And luckily, as a producer, I was able to get on those farms, because producer to producer, there's a lot of trust. And then because I was there for the length of time I was, we had really strong relationships with producers in Minnesota, and did some real good, not just for the students, but also for those cooperating producers.
And as I mentioned, as we focus on disease traceability, and in our last segment, we were talking really about new rules put out to help strengthen ADT in terms of cattle, but we also have very strong and very proven methods of disease traceability in the sheep industry. Can you talk a little bit about the foundation of the disease traceability aspect of the past, but also looking towards the future for the sheep industry here in the United States?
Sure. In 2001, we launched a revamped scrapie eradication program nationally. And I won't tell you it was met with a warm reception. And we're lucky that some key producers and state veterinarians and USDA APHIS were willing to sit down over time and make the tweaks that were necessary to make it an effective but also a practical program. And so now we would literally have more animals identified in the marketplace and on farms than probably almost any other species in the U.S. And it's been very effective. We're so close to eradicating scrapie in the country and the sheep population. Because of all that, we have a pretty good framework for the point in time when things need to change. And the easiest way for me to understand when they will need to change is we can have two approaches. We can either be proactive, kind of catch up with where some of our international trading partners are. And what I mean by that, let's look at the Canadian sheep industry, let's look at the Australian sheep industry, let's look at the UK sheep industry. So the UK sheep industry went to mandatory EID and animal movement reporting in 2009. Granted, they had a devastating situation with FMD before that. Canada's moving countrywide to mandatory sheep ID and EID and movement reporting in 25. And Australia already has a few states on board, and they're going whole countrywide in their sheep population by 2027. And so we could be proactive, or we can wait until we have a foreign animal disease event or some other major emerging disease event, and then put a program in place. So where are we in the U.S. sheep industry? There are some industry players who have been actively looking at what would it take to move the U.S. sheep industry to where we could use EID in the places we would need to, so when animals move, and capture the information so that the state animal health officials could do that rapid tracing that would be necessary.
And a lot of producers are weary of changes or new implementations, and especially if a regulation is placed upon them. What have the discussions been like in just discussing the economic impact that a disease outbreak within the sheep industry, if that occurred here in the U.S., how that could have an irreversible impact on the business, but also just those marketing opportunities that could open up along the way? So kind of the pros and the cons there in that question.
Yeah. So the cons are, I think we have so many people of generations that have never had to go through any kind of major devastating animal disease event. I think COVID helped us see what it could do from a human side. And I don't know that all of us can kind of grasp what it would mean if you couldn't move your animals off your ranch, if you couldn't sell them, if you'd have troubles getting feed brought in because they were being held for so long. The pros are, if we go forward with a program, the pros are that we have other countries teaching us the path, and we maybe could open up markets that aren't open yet today, and that's huge.
Now, you were also a part of a EID pilot program, conducting research and just trying to get a feel for the water. How did that go, and what was the reception like looking at the research?
It was difficult to find a partner to work with us as far as an auction barn, and we were very fortunate that Delta Sales Barn in Delta, Colorado was willing to work with us. And we went in and we set it up. And the challenges were that it's change, and change is hard for anybody. And then there's just going to be some structural challenges like metal interference, software that's not originally been built to handle EID. And so we found those problems. We've been able to detail what they are. And then since then, other people have said, hey, have you looked here? And so let me just use an example there. are some sale barns in the Pacific Northwest that are using cattle EID in their auction barns. They use the software program that works for them. And then we said, well, Cindy, for example, even though you thought this one country just north of your border, one province, I should say, was really small, they have a great private, non-profit run database, and they have mandatory EID in that province. And we went up there and we watched it in action. They did demonstration traces for us. They taught us that, yeah, not every producer wants to enter their information on their computer or on their mobile app. They had about 20-some% of their information come in through their call center. So that tells you something about what we should be looking at. And then we went to a sale barn where it was phenomenal, where they didn't hold up trucks unloading cattle and sheep. And once they were unloaded, they read them all, easy peasy, or that's what it appeared, because they've been at it for between 10 years on sheep and 20 years on cattle, and they read them when they left too. And it was just phenomenal. And that market owner said, I've captured business values that I did not appreciate were here. So one thing I just want to share with you, it was so cool, is when the sheep entered the auction ring, the system was able to show those sheep their weight and their number of head in different colors based on if they knew their actual date of birth, if they knew their date of birth within 6 months, or if they didn't know their date of birth. Because like any system, we get all wrapped up on it's got to be 100%. Well, they're there at it, 10 years. It's still not 100%, but the thing that was cool about the color coding system is it impacted the price that the seller received. And that's really important to me as a producer.
Well, and as we look at consumers wanting to know more about where their food comes from and the confidence, they trust producers, but they just want to know a little more, and they want real information. Because we know marketing campaigns can influence buying habits and whatnot in agriculture, but having that transparency is going to be important in the future, not just here in North America, but for buyers overseas as well. So I just think that's incredible technology. And again, we just like to congratulate you on winning that Camp Tender Award here this year, and for all that hard work in the industry. And we'll try to hopefully get these prices up too in the lamb market, like you said.
Sounds great, Lane. Thank you.
Again, thank you to Dr. Cindy Wolf for joining us here today, a producer from Minnesota, and of course, a doctor of veterinary medicine, helping advance the industry and looking towards the future of disease traceability as well. For more information on the American Sheep Industry Association, visit sheepusa.org.